I don't think it's a stretch to say that My Hero has probably been at its best in 2021. And I guess that means that Horikoshi himself has been at his best. And that's understandable because I guess since the beginning, he's just been on an upward progression. But I just think this year alone has produced multiple chapters that are already considered like some of the best in the series. And it brings me to this chapter in particular because I think this is the first I've felt a current release manga chapter is a 10 out of 10 since 2018 when I reviewed One Punch Man chapter 92. And granted, series like that aren't in Weekly Jump don't have to abide by like the 22-page limit or whatever they have. But that being said, Horikoshi does not waste any space within this chapter. Like, this is filled top to bottom. And I think it has a little something for everyone. Amazing art, of course, that just goes without saying. He always delivers. Great dialogue and exposition. Great paneling. The fight is really good and it doesn't feel rushed. And it all ties together to become like this really compelling chapter that even has unexpected callbacks and somehow ties into the greater significance of the story at the same time. I mean, this chapter has it all. This is pretty much as good as it gets in Weekly Jump, in my opinion. But anyway, it's picking up from the end of the previous chapter and we see Star and Stripe facing off against Shigaraki. But we come to his internal monologue and he says, "What is this weird sensation? I know for a fact that I'm Shigaraki, but at the same time, I am undoubtedly myself too," meaning all for one. So that's showing us that he's starting to have like this melding of the minds, which is like an unexpected side effect of this big elaborate experiment that All for One and Yujiko have been constructing. But then he like comes to and then does one of the greatest feats of power in the series by far, and we're just on page 4. He uses radio waves plus push plus load up, and he essentially makes like a Cell Saga-esque Kamehameha, but like out of air. Like, it's amazing. But that's just the beginning, because now we're coming to like the meat of this chapter, because it's going to reveal what Star and Stripe's quirk is, and that is New Order. And apparently, after touching a target and calling its name, she is able to freely impose a new rule over it. And if you break it down to its bare essentials, I guess it's like reality manipulation, right? So, you know, already one of the best quirks we've ever seen. And I think this is like the undisputed number 3 quirk behind like One for All and All for One. Like, aside from the big 2, it doesn't really get better than New Order, especially the way that she uses it in this chapter and multiple times, with each time being better than the last. It's really amazing how this plays out. It's just really masterful and for some reason refreshing. I don't want to say it's like original, at least to me, like in my own echo chamber. This is kind of unique for the most part. And it also feels kind of foreign at the same time, right? Like, this power just feels a little too nuanced and maybe a little too powerful for My Hero. Like, maybe this is almost like a Jujutsu Kaisen type of power, you know? But not in a bad way. I do think that this power very much fits in My Hero. And it just represents like the matured taste that I guess Horikoshi has acquired through creating this story and just being a mangaka. So we come to the first instance of her using it, and she's like grabbing the air, and she says, "The atmosphere from here to 100 meters in front of me will cease to exist." And then we see like it get ripped away from Shigaraki and he's like instantly suffocating. That's incredible. Like, such an amazing first display of this power. And then somehow after this, he just keeps one-upping himself. But anyway, then the Jets like fired lasers at Shigaraki, but he somehow stops them and uses reflection and refraction and like condenses them into his hand and like reflects them back at everyone. This too is already one of the greatest feats in the series. But it doesn't stop there, because as it's hitting Star and Stripe, she activates a new rule where she can hold lasers, and it allows her to grab the laser. Like I said, it just keeps getting better every time she uses this ability. But then at this point, the vacuum comes undone around Shigaraki, and then it's revealed that she can only use 2 rules at a time. One rule jewel perpetually giving her super strength. And when I heard about that in the spoilers, I wondered like, how strong does that make her exactly? And I thought, you know, how strong is she in relation to All Might? And in a pretty cool gesture here, they're straight up giving us the answer to that question immediately, where it says, although it is incomparable to All Might's, it still is quite the treat. And as we'll see, I guess that's true, because it still makes her incredibly powerful, like just as powerful as any character outside of like Izuku 100%, All Might, Shigaraki, and All for One. But anyway, then we see her use another rule, and she says a super powerful aerial maneuver. So this is what she's using after the laser touching rule. And it makes her do a move similar to what we see Izuku use against like Overhaul and Shigaraki. Like, that's just amazing. But then we get a minor little flashback that shows that when Star and Stripe was young, she was the little girl at the beginning of the Two Heroes movie that was saved by All Might. So this little moment here unexpectedly ties in to Two Heroes canon, which was always canon to the main story, as all movies are, but it rarely gets this aggressive with it in like the actual manga. That it ties back to that and shows why All Might is her spiritual master. Just amazing use of this character. So then she traps Tomura against the jet, but now that she's touched him and said his name, she makes a new rule, and that's if he even moves an inch, his heart will stop. And this is just like the finishing touch of her moveset here, I guess. But just incredible progression here from Horikoshi. And this is essentially like her defeating him, right? Because if it was any other point in the story, this is essentially defeating Shigaraki or anyone else. Because in this one instance, Shigaraki gets the rare instance of villain plot armor. Because since his mind has been melding with All for One's, apparently they've become like this new consciousness that's neither Shigaraki or All for One. So that means that when Star and Stripe made her rule applying to Shigaraki, it's being nullified because this person that she's fighting is not Shigaraki, but somehow also him. So he's inadvertently created this loophole to her ability that is essentially killing him otherwise. And also it's revealed here that Shigaraki is currently around 97-98% complete, which is incredible because he was only at like 75% when we saw him in the war, and he was already a crazy powerhouse. So right now, understandably, he was able to create those, you know, Cell Saga of air Kamehamehas. But then he's able to like break out of her rule, and we see like his hair come undone. Then it says, it all began at home. Slowly, his hatred accumulated, and then we see his house. I think this is probably going to lead to the point of where we get the reveal that All for One gave Tenko DK when he was a kid, because I think it's pretty apparent at this point that wasn't organic, and it was obviously premeditated by All for One. It just needs to be revealed to Shigaraki and the audience, and I think that's what this is probably leading to. And then in the final panel, we see like black lightning accumulating around him. Hopefully that leads to that quirk that we saw him use against Nana in the flashback in All Might Rising. I really hope so, because that quirk's amazing and we haven't seen him use it yet. And then it says the fight reaches its conclusion. So I think we all probably know what's going to happen at this point, especially what was said in the previous chapter by All for One. And I'll talk about that in a future video, like, you know, what's going to happen with Star and Stripe, her unfortunate fate. But let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments. And if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.